Stop what you're doing because you need to know that the city of Albany is being held hostage and there's practically nothing they can do besides pay the ransom. And there are multiple perpetrators in this hostage negotiation. And all they're doing to hold the city hostage is buying property. Have you ever drove by an abandoned building in the city and for years you was thinking, why won't the city just do something about this? I used to, until somebody explained it to me in a way that made me stop really blaming the city for every abandoned building. Imagine you live in a beautiful neighborhood, but there's just one house in the neighborhood that just stands out. And it's not standing out for a good reason. The owner of this house bought it years ago, but never had any intentions of moving into this house. So the house has been sitting abandoned for years. The grass is waist high, the windows are boarded up, and the roof is leaking. Got raccoons and other rodents that then moved into the house and started paying rent. And everybody in the neighborhood hates looking at this eyesore because it makes the rest of the neighborhood look bad. You and all your neighbors say, we're tired of looking at this place. We're gonna all pool our money together and we're gonna buy this eyesore. We're gonna turn it into something beautiful. So you call up the owner and you say, hey, we wanna buy this house from you because it's real dilapidated. And they're like, sure, you can buy it. I'll sell it to you, no problem. I've been wanting somebody to buy this house from. And I let it go for
about $1 million.
You gonna look at this dude confused. What? It's only worth $80,000. You saying you want $1 million? And he like, yeah, I know how much it says the market value is, but it seems like y'all want this house pretty bad because you want to make your houses look better. I see that you really care about your neighborhood, so
how much do you care about your neighborhood?
Is beautifying your neighborhood worth a simple $1 million? I'm sure you can come up with it somewhere. Now here's the part that people miss. You can't just force somebody to sell their property because you think it looks ugly. As long as they're keeping the property barely legal, they can keep it as long as they want to. He can sit on this property for years, even decades. They can pass down this property to their family as long as they're keeping it within the legal parameters. And that's the sticky issue that a lot of cities, especially Albany, find themselves in. People see abandoned buildings and immediately think, oh, the city just ain't doing nothing. But a lot of these buildings don't belong to the city. They belong to private owners. Some of them live somewhere else. Some of them have never even set foot in Albany. They just bought the property years ago because it was cheap. They probably have zero community ties to Albany, Georgia. They could care less how the city looks. So now they're waiting, not for a local entrepreneur to come asking, hey, can we buy this building from you? They're looking for somebody with some deep pockets, like the city of Albany, like a corporation, like Phoebe Putney. Because of course the city is trying to redevelop these areas. They know eventually somebody got to come knocking. So depending on who's knocking, that asking price is going to skyrocket. It's likely to be way above what the property is actually valued at. And even if they consider renting it to a local entrepreneur, the rent is not going to be based on what is economically feasible in Albany, Georgia. They're likely to look at how much other cities are making from doing similar jobs, places like Atlanta, and they're gonna say, oh, this type of business brings in this amount of money, so that's what we're gonna base your rent off of. So the expense of the rent alone becomes so overbearing that the business doesn't last long. This is a process called land banking. Think of it like somebody buys up every bottle of water in the city before a big hurricane comes. Not because they're just so thirsty. It's because they know that water is so essential. Eventually somebody gonna have to come buy some. And I can charge you whatever price I want.
Because how bad do you want to live?
This is one of the many reasons why we see a lot of these abandoned buildings being torn down rather than renovated. Because they've sat empty for so long that it costs way more to try to fix them up than to just build a new building. Now, to be fair, not every out-of-town property owner is doing the same thing. Some of them are legitimately trying to sell these properties. Some people just inherited the property. Some people really have the property, but they don't have the means of fixing the property up. So we can't paint every property owner with the same brush. But there are certain situations where these property owners can afford to wait because time is actually on their side. Meanwhile, the city is left having to answer all of our complaints. The city sees the broken windows, the weeds growing up in parking lots, graffiti, the empty storefronts, but they can't just walk onto somebody's property with a bulldozer. Many times, the city and other private developers and Phoebe have to try to negotiate and get this land back. And because these buildings are so deeply needed for redevelopment, the owner of this property has so much leverage. But the money that the city ends up having to fork over could have gone to parks or roads, public safety, or other improvements. Instead, a lot of that money simply goes to just trying to acquire the property. And that's why when they're trying to revitalize downtown, it's not as simple as it seems. Sometimes step one is just convincing somebody who's hundreds or thousands of miles away to simply sell us the property. So the next time you drive past an abandoned building, don't just assume that the city owns it. Because oftentimes the city is standing on the same sidewalk as us looking up at this building like, what are we gonna do with this? And they may feel just as ashamed as you feel. They may be hoping that the owner finally says, you know what, let's make a deal. Once you understand that, the conversation shifts from why is the city not doing anything to how do we create the proper conditions where these properties return to being useful properties for the citizens who actually live here. Because an empty building and an empty parking lot doesn't just take up space, it takes away opportunities. And that's something that every city eventually has to figure out.